1975. Two college dropouts scheme over a work table in a suburban house outside San Francisco. They are trying to create a thinking machine for the average American, a home computer. In a few weeks, they create a revolutionary artificial brain with about 1/1,000,000th the memory of today's desktop computers. The machine would be called the Apple I, the world's first Apple personal computer. In this unassuming little mess of silicon chips, a revolution was brewing. In 1976, home computing was barely a hobby. It was more like an idea. Existing computers were big, and they were still used mostly by universities and big corporations. Regular folks couldn't get their hands on them. Even computer engineers had to rent time on big computers known as mainframes. One such engineer was Steve Wozniak, an employee at Hewlett-Packard. Wozniak wanted to free computers from the control of big companies. He decided he wanted to build a computer for himself.
The first Apple, I kind of wanted to do the things that a computer can do. If you're geeky and you understand computer programs and little hexadecimal digits and how they add up to instructions, you type it in, you run your little program and demonstrate, I can run a program. Had to play games based on the fact that all the computers that do stuff for industry and commercial purposes that I don't really understand, they all show off computers playing games during open house. And if your computer can play games, it has enough computer ability to do the commercial things too.
At the time, Wozniak's project was not called a personal computer, but a microcomputer, because it was so much smaller than any similar machines. In the 1970s, the crusade for microcomputers was led by a broad collection of math wizards, techno-geeks, and engineers who formed computer clubs to share ideas. For help making this first user-friendly computer, Wozniak turned to Steve Jobs, a friend from the Atari video game company. Together, the two Steves attended meetings of a loose group of about 500 Silicon Valley hackers, designers, and would-be computer whizzes. They called themselves the Homebrew Computer Club.
At the Homebrew Computer Club, I would come down and pass out schematics to anyone. I Xeroxed a lot of schematics. One kid actually built his own. I went over to his house and helped solder the wires down. It worked.
Wozniak wasn't sure what to do with his new contraption, but Jobs had plenty of ideas.
Steve said, why don't we just sell him a pre-made PC board? A PC board has all the wires pre-done, so a person doesn't have to sit there for weeks and weeks soldering wires together to get it to work. And I said, I think we'll lose our money, because to get our money back, we'd need to sell 50 of them, and I don't think 50 people at the club are going to buy it, and I don't know surplus stores. And he said, well, so if we lose our money, we have a company for once in our lives.
Jobs dubbed their collaboration Apple Computers, possibly because he had worked in apple orchards in Oregon. The first computer became known as the Apple I. Jobs and Wozniak paid their friends to sit in Jobs' parents' garage and assemble the computer boards for $1 each. The idea was to sell them for a $20 profit apiece. One night in 1976, the club received a visit from a young education crusader named Liza Loop, a visitor from upstate Sonoma County. Loop was as excited about computing as the hacker clubs were, but for different reasons.
The neat thing about the computer was that which was completely dull and boring, done with paper and pencil, became interactive and exciting working on the computer. I think you learn a lot more outside of school than you do inside of school. So I took that idea and said, well, let's form a public access facility.
Someone told Wozniak about Loop's request, and together with Jobs, he drove up to visit Loop's educational center. The idea of computers for kids appealed to him.
She was teaching 4th, 5th, and 6th graders how computers work, and that kind of knowledge is something I always wanted to come to younger and younger and younger kids. Driving home, I said to Steve, we should give her one of our Apple I's. We should donate one. And he said, well, we've got to, you know, make the money work out. So I had to buy it for $300, but that was a good price.
In fact, the machine Wozniak bought and gave to Loop Center was the original prototype Apple computer. Not surprisingly, there wasn't much the Apple I could actually do. It couldn't balance your checkbook or print out a term paper. Still, Wozniak and Jobs made a bit more than $20 each off the Apple I's. In the end, they sold almost 200 of them. The next machine, the Apple II, was the first successful mass-produced personal computer. It launched Apple on its meteoric rise to success. The original Apple I was simply moved from Liza Loop's teaching center to her basement, which quickly became an unofficial museum of pioneering computer hardware. It has gathered plenty of dust, but if the moment was right, it could go back in the classroom.
The Apple I and the Apple II and the old machines are just as good at teaching today as they were 25, 30 years ago. Our vision was for people to take control of this technology. It's really a stupid machine. The intelligence is in the people.
The original Apple computer built by Steve Wozniak remains in the private collection of the Loop Center, now in Palo Alto, California.